Welcome to 10 Minutes. I'm Tony Scott. Today's show is sponsored by Lots of Matzo Pizza, the best frozen pizza in your grocer's freezer. It's funny when a Lots of Matzo or two get into our freezer. My kids always say, "They gone," as if to say they won't be there very long. Plenty of action around the rink last weekend all over the state. Boys and girls 15 through 17 skated in the CCM high performance programs in a quest for a skate in the U.S. National Camp in New York later this summer. These slots in that process will be announced sometime later this week. Always a nerve-wracking experience for those players who work so hard to get to this spot. As we said many times, this process is not a defining moment for a player nor an end to a hockey career. Casey Middlestat was not invited to the same festival in 2013. Think about this. He didn't even get a chance to be cut. 16 months later, he was the Bantam Player of the Year and committing to the University of Minnesota 2 months before he even played a high school game. At the youth level, a lot to report on as the YHH saw 6 champions crowned at the Minnesota Meltdown all over the Metro. The Bakken Oilers took the 07s, Machine Black dominated the 06 level, and Euro Red won the 05s, all in runaways. The 02 and 04 championship games were a little more tightly contested. Pro Ambitions, a group of Rocky Mountain Rough Riders players, paired with a few Chicago Fury guys, beat Finlandia Hockey Club 3-2. Tourney MVP Aiden Thompson from Fort Collins was an impressive 0-2. In the 04s, Tommy Chicago avenged a pool play defeat to hometown, winning 4-3 to take the hardware there. Owen Hendrickson and Xander Billings were beasts for the Tommies. And how can you forget Team Gradient? They beat the Colorado Kodiaks 5-1 to take the 03s. Chaz Lucius had 22 goals in 5 games for Gradient. A handful of Minnesota teams went to Chicago last weekend. Only one came home with hardware. The 2006 Blades took second in the Elite Division after sweeping through the pool play at the Chi-Town Shuffle. The 2005 Blades went to Nashville and took part in the Brick Series tourney and had a couple nice wins over the Boston Junior Bruins and the Detroit Stars. Speaking of AAA hockey, our first edition of the AAA Top 5 comes out tomorrow. Not a lot of surprises so far as we scan the rosters and results. In the next 2 weeks, the USHL and WHL will hold their entry drafts. The WHL will draft 2001 birth year skaters and goalies. Because it is rare for Minnesota kids to play in the WHL, you usually don't see our boys taken in the high rounds. The WHL is a perfect case of a free market economy. They are likely to draft players who are most likely to play for their teams. So if you see a player from Minnesota drafted lower than one versus one from Minnesota or Canada that they may not be as talented, don't freak out. The same can be said for the USHL draft. Because of the strength of high school hockey in Minnesota, many USHL teams don't choose Minnesota players as high as Tier 1 players from other states. Likelihood of playing for that team on the team's schedule sometimes far outweighs the player's overall ability. That said, here are a few Minnesota 01 players we think will be drafted in the WHL. Killian Keeker-Olsen from Anoka, Clay Hannes from Minnetonka, and Minneapolis native Jake Hale will be chosen. How high? No one really can tell. Other obvious choices will be Division I commits like Grant Silanoff and Caden Bolson from Shattuck. A few other 01 players that stand out from YHH will be likely considered or drafted: Mike Kester, Bobby Brink, and Nick Norman. As for the USHL draft, Ben Brinkman has to be the highest rated draft eligible 2000 player from Minnesota. The future captain of Edina's varsity declined an invite to the national development team. Will he be the first to be chosen? That remains to be seen. Other 2000 you think would be chosen very high are 2015 Bantam Player of the Year Gavin Hain, another player who declined the NDTP in March. The North Dakota commit is staying in Grand Rapids to make another run at the state tournament next year. We'd also expect Hain's buddy from Grand Rapids, Blake McLaughlin, to also be chosen high. The future Gopher was very impressive during the NDTP evaluation last month, too. These are 3 locks. There are a few more. Jack Jensen from EP, Todd Scott from Albertville, and Devlin McCabe from St. Paul Academy. USHL coaches love these 3. Many of the top Minnesota 2000s were on display in Plymouth this past weekend. It's been proven with a good showing over 3 games, a player can catch the eye of the right coach or the right scout. Here are 3 names that had a great weekend and might have caught the eye or two from a scout from the USHL. Xander Lampa from Rochester John Marshall, Joey Gimberlin from Cretin Durham Hall, and Andy Baran from St. Paul Academy. All had great weekends. They may have caught the eye of a certain scout or two. We also wouldn't be surprised if the Fargo Forest were to choose a Moorhead kid or two, like Bantam standouts Ethan Frisch or Isaac Howe. These guys didn't miss a beat making the jump from Bantams to the Elite 16 level last weekend. Coming up on YHH the next couple weeks, I'll be presenting our top 50 squirt, peewee, and bantam lists. Following that, we'll be inviting 200 plus players to participate in our Peewee Challenge next fall. In May, we will be covering both the USHL's Clark Cup and the NAHL's Robertson Cup as these two seasons wind down. We'll also be covering the Mayflower Cup and 03 Invite Tourney held in Plymouth next weekend, as well as the Independent Classic later in May. It's May and we're busy as February. Welcome to the State of Hockey. Today's Lots of Matza trivia question is a really tricky one and meant for my generation. The Minnesota North Stars had a superfan. He wore a Stars jersey and walked the aisles of Met Center and greeted fans and gave high fives. He was their unofficial mascot. A few free pizzas to the person who can come up with this fishy character's nickname. Send an email to youthhockeyhub@gmail.com. The first to send us the right answer wins. Boom Roasted. This Boom Roasted goes out to all hockey coaches in the offseason that are giving the guilt trip. And I'll give you an example. 7 years old all the way to 18 years old, there are kids playing other sports, soccer, baseball, lacrosse. They're involved in other things. We're trying to promote athleticism here besides just hockey. And these coaches are giving guilt trips. They're telling kids not to go. They're telling them to stay and play hockey. It's the second season for hockey right now. Second season means the first season is what the kids should be playing. So Boom Roasted to coaches that are coaching the second season are giving the guilt trip. Finally, a game puck to Tom Chorsky. I published a video this past week on Game On Minnesota that gave tribute to the 1986-87 Gopher team that took a really great team picture. I hope you enjoy the video, and much thanks to Tom for presenting that picture on Twitter a couple weeks ago. So game puck goes to Tom. We'll see you guys around the rink. Have a nice day.